Thank you, everybody. I'm calling this May 12th, 2025 special meeting of the Mancasari 6th School Board to order. The time is 6 p.m. Heather, roll call, please.
Emily Hutchinson Brown, here. Jim Hunter.
Present.
Craig Vinali.
Here.
Rachel McWhorter. Here. Victor Figueroa.
Yeah.
Will you guys join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. Please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. If you want to hold a sidebar conversation, please take it out into the hall. And just reminding everyone, this is a meeting of the Board of Education in public rather than a meeting with the public. During this meeting, there's time for public participation. Comments will be heard if you've signed up regarding specific items. And we'll require anybody to sign up now. Commentary will be limited to 3 minutes. When you're called on for comments, please state your name clearly for the record, exercise your speech rights responsibly. We also, the president of the board may opt to allow people to sign up for public participation or during the meeting and call you to speak then. Please note that at this time, this is for public comment and not necessarily for discussion. The board shall listen to the comment. There will be a recognition of the comment from the president. However, any discussion among the board is held when that agenda item is discussed. All right.
Move that we approve the agenda.
Do we have a
second?
Okay. Any discussion? No. Heather called a question.
Craig Vinali.
Aye.
Victor Figueroa.
Aye.
Jim Hunter.
Aye.
Emily Hutchinson Brown.
Aye.
Rachel McWhorter.
Aye. All right. Motion carries 5-0. Now we would need a possible motion.
Now we need to look and see if we have public comment. Public comment first before executive session?
Actually, it'll be at the end. I don't think we have anybody signed up.
No?
Nope.
There's nothing? Okay.
Nope. Is there a motion?
So I just read this?
Yep.
Okay. I move to enter executive session. The board may enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F(I) to discuss personnel matters related to the non-renewal recommendation for the middle school ELA probationary teacher and the ESS probationary teacher. If requested by the teachers, the discussion will be held in open session as requested by CRS 24-6-4014F(I).
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, we're not HR. And yeah, we want to know the policy and law has been followed. And I'm satisfied that all parties have been adequately heard. I mean, we've had public comment, we've had documentation, there's been letters, there's been conversations. And I think some of this is basically undermining our leadership to be taking this any further. And we have an action item next meeting to approve or disapprove the recommendations. And I think that's where this needs to be taken up.
Okay. Any other comment?
I agree with Tim. I don't think our job right now as a board is to get into the HR matters that has to do with staff. That's something that our admin is tasked with, and our job is to review that decision and approve that at the necessary time. I think that's going to be at the next meeting. I don't think it's something that we really have the purview. It's not necessarily our responsibility to venture into. I think it's for us with all fidelity to trust the process that we have instituted. We need to maintain that responsibility.
Any further?
I would like to go into executive session because I think there are some things that we do need to discuss that should not be brought up in the public meeting next week.
I believe the same. I feel like there's evidence that we need to share with the rest of the board to determine whether policies have been followed.
What is not, well, all the documentation has been available. And I've reviewed everything that is there. I don't know what, and obviously it's something you want to bring up in executive session, but I don't see that there's anything else.
That's why I'd like to share that with you. And I can't share it in public because it's a personnel deal. So if I have the opportunity to share that, I'll be glad to.
Well, that could be shared individually with board members outside of an executive session.
Well, it's a board discussion that needs to ultimately be voted on next week.
Right.
So we should all have the same information and have a discussion about it.
And like I say, I think all this stuff has been adequately heard and addressed via what's been available through the public comment, through the letters that have been presented, through conversations and documentation.
And I have information that there isn't that. There isn't documentation and there isn't evaluations, there isn't observations.
There's something, this is just something that we don't do, like, if we went through all of our board meetings, went through the agendas, and we saw all the personnel actions that were taken, that we've, agreed and disagreed on. It's kind of that same, like, what is it about this one?
There were
You know,
things that
that's-
weren't done correctly, that
I-
we don't want to.
That were reported not to be done correctly, but there was a grievance filed and the grievance report was given to us. And that grievance was completed by an outside third party,
We did not even have to do the grievance under policy.
correct?
We paid money to have this reviewed by a third party, independent party. And it came up with the same recommendations that administration made.
I believe that has missing some information. And if we want to do this public, we can do this public, but I would like to do it in executive session.
Next week, we will be voting on contracts and non-renewals and the budget, along with multiple other items that are going to be on the agenda. Tonight, we have on our agenda, a movement and a second to go into executive session. That was the discussion. Is there any further discussion? Everybody has stated their opinion. So Heather, I'm going to ask you to call us to question, please. Mr. Benelli?
Nay.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
No,
Ms. Hutchison Brown? No. Ms. Word? Aye. The motion will fail 3-2. And at this point in time, I would like to ask Mr. Tim Farmer, who is the school district's attorney of record, to please give us some public presented facing, so everybody hears, guidance as to the purview of the Board of Education when it comes to matters of human resources.
Sure. First, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'm usually on that little owl right there.
I know you are. You're usually on the screen for us.
So I'm grateful to be here in person and, you know, get to kind of see a little bit more of the school district and some of the great work you guys are doing. So I work with, many different school districts. We work with charter school boards. We work with traditional nonprofits. We work with a lot of entities that have a board, executive director, or board superintendent structure. And let me just start by saying that this is not an uncommon question that comes up. It's something that a lot of boards grapple with and trying to understand and come to agreement as a board in terms of your protocols, how you interact with your superintendent, how you engage when issues come up, and it can be HR issues, it can be parent concerns, it can be student concerns, any of the day-to-day matters that come up in a school district. Trying to figure out how, as a board, you want to engage in those is a good conversation to have as a board. So I think in some ways it's good for you all to be grappling with this, and hopefully I would encourage you all to continue to refine and work on coming to agreement on your policies and procedures and protocols in this area. Having said that, particularly with HR matters, I would say that process is paramount. I'll say unfortunately. Unfortunately, I've worked on dozens and scores and countless HR matters. It's one of the primary phone calls that I get as a general counsel working with school districts is HR related issues that come up. in my experience, the difference between situations that lead to whether it's unlawful termination or some type of successful lawsuit against a school district and not is the process that's followed. Sometimes it's not even the actions that were taken, it's the process that's followed. So you want to have clear process, clear procedures, clear protocols for handling HR matters. Now, in general, your day-to-day operations, including HR matters, get handled by your superintendent. There are avenues through which those matters can come to the board. Grievance processes can be appealed up the chain. If it's a grievance or a complaint specifically against the superintendent, particularly serious matters, things that are, violations of federal law or anti-harassment or discrimination, type complaints would come directly to the board, but then you would want to respond to those in an organized way as a board, and be careful and cautious not to muck things up by sort of independently looking into those matters. But again, those are even that's typically going to be done in limited circumstances. Everything else, you want to work with your superintendent. He's going to be the window into the school district that you work through. You certainly have an oversight role and responsibility to ensure that everything's being done correctly. But ultimately, the avenue and the process should run through the superintendent again, unless in those exceptional circumstances where the actual complaint is against the superintendent, but then you'll want to have an organized process as a board. I tell boards this all the time. The grievance process is your friend. It's not uncommon for, and I'll say this, I don't know what the particular circumstances are with some of what you guys are dealing with, but it's not uncommon for a board member to be at the football game on a Friday night, right? A constituent comes up to you. You'll never believe what happened in the school today, or you'll never believe what happened to my student, or Mr. So-and-so, the history teacher, you'll never believe. And it can be easy to have that sort of natural human impulse to just sort of be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Mr. So-and-so did this thing that I'm hearing about. What I would advise you to do in those situations is refer people to the grievance process, right? Like, there's two sides to every story. I've investigated, I don't know how many dozen workplace issues or student-based grievances or complaints. And I can tell you what typically happens is you always sit down with the complainant first, right? So I'll sit down with the complainant, I'll interview them, I'll get done with that interview, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like this is a terrible story. I can't believe all these things happened. And then you start interviewing more people. And then you interview the accused party. And then you start looking at documentary evidence. And I can tell you that almost in every case, the story that you heard at the beginning is not the full story, right? Like it's always going to be sort of cast in the worst light. There's two sides to every story. Everybody has an opportunity to tell both sides of the story. And so that's why we have process, right? Like, that's why when that person comes up to you at a football game or, out at the grocery store, you can listen and that sort of thing, but refer them to the grievance process, refer them to a process where everybody's voice is going to be heard. And ultimately, if what they're saying is true or something bad happened, it can be addressed and remedied through the proper channels and through proper process. And, that is going to be the best way to ensure that you're reducing any liability exposure for the school district. That's the way that you're going to want to make sure everybody's side of the story gets told. And I guess the last thing I would say is particularly with HR matters, they're super sensitive, super particular. Anybody that works in HR can, have tons of training and use this word and not that word and say this and not that. And like, it's very delicate. And so, you have to be really careful. Even when you do investigations or you start questioning people, you have to be very careful. Even the way you ask a question, if you say the wrong word, that can potentially expose the district's liability. So just being very careful in those situations. At the end of the day, you got to trust the professionals that you've put in place to do those things. If you don't trust those professionals, right, that's a different conversation in terms of person's evaluation and that sort of thing. But ultimately, if they're in that position, if they're in that role, you do have to have a degree of trust. And again, if for whatever reason, you know, there is a lack of trust, there are avenues and processes that can be pursued by complainants to bring those matters before the board. But I would just recommend sticking to that, sticking to your process and procedures, continue to refine them. You know, I would encourage you guys to do some work together as a board. You know, you can have you have the best written policy in the world, right? But if, as a board, you don't all feel like it's a collective thing that you've all bought into and you all agree that you're gonna hold each other to that expectation, it's not what the paper it's written on, right? So I think working together as a board to come up with those expectations, those procedures, that sort of group commitment, like, hey, we're all gonna agree that this is how the process should work. And when issues like this arise in the future, that's just what I would encourage you to do.
Thank you. The reason that Mr. Farmer was here this evening was just in the event that we did go into executive session and to offer us his guidance as the district's attorney of record. I did not say anything during discussion, so I didn't feel like I needed to, but I do have some words that I, for the first time in 4 years' time, actually wrote down because I want to make sure that I express myself very clearly. In my leadership role as president of the Mancos Board of Education, I work to keep my focus on the business of running a school district efficiently with the partnership of the superintendent, my colleagues on the board, teachers, and our community. I will remind everybody that I am a graduate of Mancos High School and I will date myself with the year of 1990. Mr. Brian Hansen was my sophomore algebra teacher and my senior class trip chaperone. I was raised by educators, teachers. I know and I mostly understand all of the ways from old school paddling to new school project-based learning. I have known many of you in this community and your families and many of you that are here today for the majority of my life. I have been an involved parent since the day that my son enrolled in the Mancos Early Learning Center. It has been nearly 10 years of attending and participating in parent meetings, the PTA, the district accountability, and now board work for the last 4 years. I have done this all with as much dedication and professionalism as I give my actual career, and oftentimes spending nearly the same amount of time. It is not a secret that I say wholeheartedly that I have been involved with the school district for my son first and foremost, but also for the staff and the student outcomes. Because I know that Mancos exudes excellence in our students, with our community service, the arts, our ranching families, and our heritages. This school sends students into the world where they make a difference, and this staff and this leadership team are who make that happen year after year together. So you can imagine my consistent heartache and, quite frankly, my dissatisfaction with our district and our community over the last several weeks. We are supposed to be celebrating our student achievements and rewarding our staff, sending our families off to a summer break and sending our seniors into the world to make that difference. But instead, I have witnessed an out of control spiral that is unprofessional, unnecessary, and absolutely heartbreaking. As the president of the Board of Education, this is the precise reason that governance, policies, and a leadership structure exist. It's the chain of command, a safety net to cradle the needs of a larger group to help calm, guide, and develop. When this is respected and more so trusted, it works. We all deserve trust and faith, and this is what I want for all of us and all who hear this message, who sit here today or who are watching. It's easy to be said, right? But what breaks down trust? Untruths, rumors, assumptions. The wholehearted belief in something which spurs great emotion and which is not actually known as factual. That is what spurs that. This feeling immediately tries to cloud reasoning and it clouds your judgment. And how do we build trust? And how do we understand and find truth? Well, we should go seek it out ourselves. And how do we do that? We talk to the right people. You ask questions. You listen with an open mind and an open heart that needs truth. You try to put yourself in the shoes of the other person that you're asking. You gather facts. You do the work. You trust the process. There's a process for a reason. Do you think that our business manager, who's been with us for 25 years, has an easy job? Chrissy has done nothing else but gather facts for 25 years associated with dollars, pretty black and white, and yet she has to manage her heart. The relationships and her asks, all of your asks, everybody's asks, land on Chrissy's desk. She comes to everybody every year for these, and after 25 years of being a district business manager, I think every single decision is still hard, especially when it's a cut, which we just spent over almost 2 hours talking about tonight. Do you believe that leading a school district as a principal is easy work? Ask him. Ask how many hours that they put in and how many hurdles that they overcome. Do you believe that having a passion for project-based learning and pouring your entire soul into trying to coach others and trying to affect change is easy? Teaching teachers, how is that simple? Do any of you believe that standing up for what is right and enforcing the policies, being a dean of students, yet all the while encouraging a child to be the best character that they can be, comes without its challenges? Is leaving the love of teaching in the classroom because you believe in something so much that you're willing to work harder for and make a difference easy? And I am here today to implore and reiterate to the staff, leadership, this board, and our community that we are better. We are better than the behaviors and the actions which have made their way to the Board of Education over the last several weeks. Because the leadership, the trust, the chain of command, and the professionalism from the top all the way down to the bottom have been disregarded and not just ignored, but frankly disrespected and purposefully undermined. It has been embarrassing and heartbreaking. There is policy set in place for this entire PK-12 school district. I spoke earlier about trust and trusting in a system and trusting in policy. Mr. Farmer spoke along those same lines as well. Trust in the system and policy, and trusting in your colleagues to follow policy, trusting in teachers to enforce policy with students, trusting in administrators to follow policy with teachers and students. If we are all not following process and policy or leading by example ourselves, when we send these kids out into the real world, they will soon see that undermining authority and deceptiveness just doesn't always work. Make a school's heritage is better than that, and we as people are better than that. So I'm going to close with this. We have 7 days left in this school year. The Board of Education has hired a new superintendent who begins her employment July 1st. I assure you that she is watching this meeting, and I also can assure you that she has watched all of the meetings. The superintendent is the Board of Education's one sole employee with whom we work and we govern with. We have no place and we have no power to intervene in matters of human resources, as echoed here by our attorney this evening. It's not our place. There is a process. There's a grievance procedure. There is a chain. That is what we need to be using. Mr. Cordray has a succession plan to accomplish. He has an elementary principal to hire. He has chosen to stay through the very end of his contract, and I have seen him work even harder to ensure a smooth transition for this district. And for that, I am personally and deeply grateful. He is a man of integrity who cares deeply about this district, and he will leave this district better than he found it. He has left his leadership mark, and he is leaving this district better than he found it. There are still contracts to affirm, vacancies to fill. There is more work to be done, and your Board of Education, we have our own work and our own training to be done, as is clearly evident. We also have to come together better, trusting one another in service to our district under the guidelines of the policy and practices that are expected of us from our community with whom we work for. We are part of the leadership. At the Mancos School District, our unwavering commitment is to create a learning environment where every student can thrive, guided by the Board of Education. We focus on a strategic plan. Our district goals are designed to ensure continuous improvement and student success. Our approach is built around 5 key pillars: team-driven shared leadership, data-based problem solving, evidence-based best practices, layered support for the diverse needs of our students and our staff, and strong community and family partnerships. By working together, we aim to build a caring, supportive school district where children are empowered to excel both socially and academically, preparing them for life beyond graduation. That is our sole purpose. Our purpose is not to get inside the walls of the school these school buildings or this school district and start to do the work that we have empowered our one employee to do. And I would remind us of that same thing. I feel extremely strongly about that. I have sat quietly for 2 months watching. And I know that we will all do the work to start the school year next year better. And we will all be making hard decisions that we don't like to go to bed with at night. But that's what it takes to make a school district run. Sometimes you've got to make the hard decisions. With that, I am done with my words. We have a regular board meeting next Monday night. It will be long. We will have a normal work session. We will have probably an agenda that's twice as long as normal. Yes, we will be voting to either affirm or not affirm the recommendations made to the board by our superintendent of the district and his leadership team. Therefore, we will do our best to get that agenda and all of that documentation out prior to that meeting as early as possible. It will likely be Thursday. I would encourage every board member and every staff member and every community member and every student to follow the process. And ultimately, that means if you have not sat in front of that man, which I know many have not, there is no reason that the Board of Education should be hearing that voice first. It is an undermining of that process that Mr. Farmer spoke to us about earlier. And I am adamant about that because it is the only thing that will make a district run smoothly. Respect and professionalism. And that is how I conduct myself. And that is what I will expect when I'm sitting at this table. No less. Does anybody else want to offer anything before we close?
I would like to make a motion on the other one, please. So since we have Mr. Farmer here for legal guidance.
Go right ahead.
I move that the board may enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 4B to conference with the school district's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions regarding the recommendations of two probationary teachers, other HR matters related to various allegations of the district responses, legal issues related thereto, and sunshine law.
Okay. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Heather, call to question.
Mr. Bernard.
Me.
Mr. Figueroa.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
No,
Mr. Hurst.
No.
Ms. McCord.
Aye. The motion will fail 3-2. I will also advise the board that to enter into executive session, furthermore, we need 4 positives. We have 2 positives. It's pretty clear that our board has work to do. We will not be entering into executive session. We will not be discussing these matters. I would ask that you both sit with Mr. Cordray or speak to us outside of the public meeting.
Can we
This is
speak
not
with
our
Mr.
business.
Farmer on our own, or does it have to be with an executive session?
No, you're allowed to speak with him. Yeah, everybody can. All right,